Hi, and welcome everybody to this week's show. I'm your host, Jack Canfield, and today I'm going to be talking with Reverend Jakob Merchant, who has dedicated his life to helping people deepen their experience of love, creating a living spirituality where every moment is life is lived inspired. And in the last 20 years, he has helped numerous people in the fields of spirituality, religion, and mental health. And he's here with me today to discuss his latest book, Surrender to Love, a book that can transform your life. Welcome, Jakob.
Thank you. It's great to connect again with you.
Me too. Now, surrender to love. What a great topic. It's I think love's the most important thing on the planet, as I know you do as well. So how would you summarize your new book, Surrender to Love?
Surrender to Love takes you from wherever you are to that realization and experience that love is all that exists. It is a process, like a technique, that in my experience and in my understanding is the most efficient way to freedom, to the freedom to love. And it's also a book for the spiritual seeker who already has been in contact with spiritual teachings, but now is ready for a transformation. For example, just like a caterpillar that undergoes metamorphosis and becomes a butterfly, surrender to love is this metamorphosis from the I into infinite love. And if I would share a story that's in the book that relates to that, many years ago, I was at home, it was Christmas, and I was listening to who was my spiritual teacher at that time, Dr. Wayne Dyer. And his words were passing by on me, and in a way the whole world was passing by on me. And then I had this spiritual experience. There was this knowingness. It was beyond the mind, beyond the intellect, even beyond thoughts. It was an absolute knowingness. And that knowingness was that this life no longer belonged to me, that it wasn't my life. And so when I came out of the spiritual state, I rewound the tape and I wanted to know what he was talking about. And he was quoting a book called Power versus Force from Dr. David Hawkins. And I started studying Dr. Hawkins' work. And at a certain point, Dr. Hawkins says, if Jesus, Krishna, Buddha, whatever you call the divine, love, would stand right here in front of us, we would say, anything you want, Lord, anything. And that eventually brought me here to Sedona. And with that intention of surrendering to love, I had another spiritual experience where the whole world would fade away, all form was fading away, there was no body, there was no mind. There was only this inner light, this golden light. There was only love. What was different this time, I had this experience many times as a child, was I had a different context, I had an understanding, and most importantly, I had some support and guidance. And so I could surrender to love. And this support and guidance is what the book offers.
When you talk about surrendering to love, I'm thinking of our average viewer out there who, everyone wants to be more, we all know that love's important, whether we live it or not. But for the average person who's just starting out, perhaps not, an advanced spiritual seeker, explain what you mean by surrendering to love.
Yes. And I would also like to say, the less you know, the better it is. The easier it is to actually practice spiritual life. There's more openness. So surrender to love is a form of self-surrender, a form of giving yourself completely. You could say to the divine, and in particular to love. In this process, one of the things that is most important is to come to a place where the love for love is greater than for the individual self. And we do this with various different things. from spiritual counseling to worship services to courses and so forth. But there needs to come a point where the love is so great that one can give up anything, can give up that individual self or that I. And from there comes then the freedom.
I think most people, before they really delve deeply into it, are kind of scared by that concept. I'm going to give up myself. I'm going to give up the I, as you call it, the ego, whatever, the identification with that which really isn't me. And they're afraid, well, who do I become then? Talk about that.
Yes. So it's really a stepwise process for many. What we are offering is often there's this first glimpse of love by being loved. Then there might be an expanding of the experience of love into unconditional love. And then finding a love that doesn't depend on anything because it's beyond form. What it means is really that one becomes a quality love instead of being a person. And it's a natural process. One just grows in that experience. So it's not something that one forces oneself to do. And the fear is cushioned by the presence itself.
Talk about the book a little bit. The book it contains some really, I think, deep concepts about what love is, what it isn't, and so forth. And then there are exercises in the book that help people to let go of that which isn't love and to surrender more deeply into. Can you talk a little about the contents of the book?
So yes, the first part of the book describes the journey of love. It describes all the different types and manifestations of love. It describes first the love that most people are able to relate to. There's romantic love, there's physical love, personal love. There's the love from a parent to a child, to a husband to a wife. And there's also spiritual love that then starts to go beyond that, where it becomes a lovingness, it becomes who one is. And then the book goes even further, describing the different qualities that one experiences. And the book also includes many practices, as you said. It focuses on the components that are surrendered to love. One we already talked about, which is devotion or devotion to love. Another most important one is humility. We work with humility in absolutely everything we do. It's in all the different books. It's in the courses. And humility essentially means that I don't know. Show me thy love in its place. And there's a great freedom that comes with that. When we look at problems that people face, how do we solve those problems? Humility can be a direct avenue to solving many of those problems.
Mm-hmm.
Another component would be focusing on the will itself and working with that. And in that aspect, it can be very effective because in every situation that we're facing, there can be immediate freedom by letting go of the individual will.
Say what you mean by that, letting go of the individual will.
The individual will is what the I, the self, who we are in a sense, wants in a certain way. It wills it a certain way. And once that is removed from a situation, love can take its place.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, from where you are now in your life, which is very evolved, and with all that you know now, if you could talk to the you that you were 10 or 20 years ago, what's the one thing you might say to yourself?
I would say that love is the most important aspect of one's life. There's nothing beyond love. Sometimes we tend to look for certain gains, we look for different things, and I would tell myself that there's nothing beyond love. When we talk about love as the ultimate reality, it is at the same time the very pathway to go there. I would say to myself 10, 20 years ago that one of the most helpful things in my life has been to have a certain spiritual guidance. I remember when I was younger and had certain spiritual experiences, there was nobody there that I could talk to that could help me in any way. And only when I found different spiritual communities, when I eventually found my spiritual teacher, facilitating many transformations automatically. And so I would say to myself, to find a spiritual community, to find a spiritual counselor or teacher or anything of that sort, that will facilitate more transformation and it will be more helpful than most other things.
No, I hear that, excuse me, I hear that a lot from people who have had some kind of awakening, perhaps in a dream or, just a midi moment of enlightenment, if you will, and they don't know what to do with it because they don't have a guide, they don't have a teacher, they don't have anyone who knows how to explain to them what's going on and to guide them from that place. So I totally agree with you. Now, I know that you have a beautiful retreat and you have a health center in Sedona, Arizona, and you offer in-person and online classes, other events, services. Talk about that for a brief moment and then share how people can reach out to get more help or more information about those.
Okay, the first step probably would be to look at one of our websites. There's a lot of different things you can find there. The book, 10 Principles to Living Spirituality, can be downloaded there for free. It's a very complete spiritual pathway in itself. It also describes what we do and who we are. And from there, we offer daily morning meditations. We offer an evening call. We live stream an evening devotional service. And we even have free online courses, all of which can be an introduction in what we're doing. And you know when you're ready to receive spiritual counseling or spiritual guidance of any way. And that knowingness leads into that metamorphosis of love. And
so what's the websites or that they should go to?
There is jakobmerchant.com and communionwithlove.com.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you so much for several things, for devoting your life to love, for sharing it with the other people, for writing this book, and for being on our show today, letting people know that there is a place where they can learn more and surrender into who they truly are. So thank you, Jakob.
Thank you, Jack.
My pleasure. All right. For those of you, I also want to thank you for showing up today and being here and listening to Jakob and myself talk about this. I really encourage you to check out his work, go to his website, and the book, Surrender to Love. It really is the essence of what we all want to be experiencing because it's who we are. We just have to surrender into it. Sometimes what we think is the most difficult thing can be something that can happen in a moment if we're willing to devote our full commitment and attention to it. So thank you for joining us this week. Please join us again next week. We'll have another wonderful guest who can help you get from where you are to where you want to be, or in this case, from where you are to who you really are. So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Until then, stay safe and stay healthy.